Oh god, it's the Karen's Witch Club. Cold opener for this one was
40枚のおむつを30枚に減らしてお値段そのままやなんて言語道断
Okay, was someone on staff an actual witch who could see the future? The show proper opened with more witch baby exams, and yeah, they've gone beyond that Malcolm in the Middle reference I made last time. I mean, if this were any other situation, we need a real hero stat.
The baby! We gotta stop that stroller!
What? Were you expecting someone else? Anyway, not too surprisingly, God Baby has to God Baby, and we got the shortest exam of this whole damn series. But hey, if we're spared the Moltas and Hachitaro talking, then yeah, I'm sure as hell not complaining. Anyway, after passing the exam, Majo Heart, having started to recognize the Ojamajo's child raising abilities, especially when dealing with a Queen Rose baby, decided to give them an extra test. She didn't actually tell them that she was testing them, as technically this was off the books, instead she just egged Doremi into doing it, which isn't all that difficult of a task. Anyway, they agreed to get some lavender from a witch named Majodon. Along the way, they decided to stop by a coffee shop with a very different aesthetic, being a mismatched blend of East and Western, whilst also being a little too fancy for a freaking coffee shop. Now, this just might be part of some elaborate and subtle storytelling that we'll bring up later, so just keep that in mind. Anyway, they ended up running into Della, getting a head start on her taxes this year by the looks of it, and asked if she knew anything about Majodon, which got a curious reaction from everyone in the shop. And yeah, this episode was animated by Chuji Nakajima, and while this was technically another one of his lesser works, the subpar animation at least kind of worked in this scene by having everyone having the same derpy expression, making it a little more hilarious than they might have even intended. Anyway, Della revealed that Majodo was the CFO in charge of all the business transactions in the witches world. So basically she's Jeff Bezos if he had control over every business. I'm sorry for putting that horrifying image in your mind. Anyway, she gave them a note to give her, and the Ojamajo paid for their cakes using one of Onpu's seeds. Yeah, as it has been previously established, seeds and spheres were both the power source and currency of this world, though the former object has slightly greater value due to its greater power. Okay, putting aside that she had a whole bag of that stuff under the counter to be used just as change, I do have to admit, I like this little sending detail. I mean, we already knew that seeds were much stronger, and now as currency, this clarifies that they're pretty much like large paper notes versus just plain old coins. It was a good subtle bit of world building that was also going to be very relevant for this episode, and not just because they had to pick up Della's tab. Eventually, they reached the lair of the final boss, I mean, Majodon's home. And not too surprisingly, she quickly revealed that she was ever so slightly bigoted. Granted, she was willing to do business with them, but not at anything resembling a reasonable price. Hell, even her hospitality didn't come free, so the Ojamajo tried to use Della's note. Hey, with this recession, that's probably one of the biggest W's you can get right now. Understandably not wanting to deal with this witch in every sense of the word, they left after they gave her the remainder of their change. As for whether or not she was actually giving them a fair price, well, that was left ambiguous, but she did reveal why she might have done it through a flashback. During the time before the witch's world cut ties with the human world, Majodon had been in a very dramatic relationship with a dude named Salvatore. And yeah, I hope this flashback is just being told through this witch's rose-tinted glasses, because I'm pretty sure most people don't talk like they're in Romeo and Juliet.
A right good marksman, and she's fair, I love.
A right fair mark fair, cuz.
Though these two weren't being torn apart by their families, but rather their whole worlds. Again, as has been previously established, a witch's lifespan far exceeded that of the average human, so if the two actually had gotten into a relationship, Majodon would have either had to suffer through far outliving her partner, or somehow undo her witchdom. Either way, it was a difficult decision not to be taken lightly, so she returned to the witch's world to think it over for just a little while. She did eventually resolve to give up being a witch, but before she did, she wanted to tell Salvatore, and as it turned out, that little while for her was actually 10 human years. And to be fair, he's not wrong for thinking that way. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I initially thought that they were gonna pull some kind of twist where this dude would turn out to be just a jerk-ass, especially after he gave this look, but rather refreshingly, he didn't. He gave a perfectly solid reason for giving up on Majordome, with even being visually shown with him very clearly aging after a decade, and the witch not changing in the slightest. At that point, even if he had still believed in her, he was right in that we all have to kind of move on with our lives and our very limited time on this planet. But by that same token, Majodo's not wrong for thinking the way she does either. I mean, yes, she was wrong for holding a grudge that we'll get to in just a minute, but you also can't expect a nigh-immortal being to fully understand or value the significance of the passage of time. For her, 10 years was probably like 10 days, meaning that this dude cheated on her after only about a week from her viewpoint at least. It's all a matter of perspective, and neither party was wrong for holding theirs. That said, holding a grudge, no matter how long they have to live, and even voting in favor of cutting ties with the human world based off of her own unfortunate experience that was no one's fault, was very short-sighted and petty on Majodone's part. Same can be said for much of the old Witches console, which also included a pre-character developed Majo Heart. Though in her case, she did at least have some more objective reasoning to support her case, as apparently the humans were misusing some of their medicinal herbs, and while they didn't clarify what she was talking about, considering that this was taking place around the 1900s, well, there were some particular plants, especially in Asia, that were quite popular. Again, I just love how this episode went all in with its world building, as well as a little for the characters. Realizing her own mistakes, Majo Heart persuaded her old friend to give the Ojamajo another chance should they come back, even betting her grandmother's heirloom on it. The Don didn't believe they would, but sure enough. Though being a stubborn old bat, she tried to drive them away again, this time by giving them an insanely difficult task of cleaning her house, which, yeah, even if it is a relatively big place, it wasn't that hard, especially when there was 4 of them. They even had some time and energy to provide some free after services, including doing her laundry and frying up some grass by the looks of it. Seriously, what the hell is that? Regardless, a strong showing of character for our main heroines and their integrity. They could have easily stopped at the cleaning, but likely feeling sorry for the old witch, they tried to help her out in every way they could, which considering the state of her house, she did kind of need. In turn, it also exposed how complacent the witches' world was because of their over-reliance on magic. With even little details like how imbalanced the sphere/seed economy was, to how overly indulgent some of their shops were, it was clear that they kind of needed the human world to ground them back to concepts like practicality. Otherwise, if they ever did lose their magic, they'd be pretty much doomed if they can't even tie their shoelaces without it. Seemingly realizing that humans aren't all that bad, the Dawn admitted defeat and gave the Ojamajo both the Lavender and Majo Heart's heirloom. And with that, the episode ended with the tantalizing prospect of an actual big bad for the show beyond the Forbidden Door, and no, not that crap. This was a really good episode, especially if you're into subtle world building like myself. For the most part, especially in regards to Majodone's backstory, not everything was spelled out, and it was just left to the viewers to figure out how the unease between the human and witch's world came about, with both of them having some very unfortunate incidents and maybe some shady stuff on the part of the human. And on top of that, our heroines just being their amiable selves and the prospect of some much more interesting conflicts in the future, and you get probably one of the strongest, most significant episodes of this second season so far. While I'll admit, some of the stuff I picked up on might not have been fully intentional or even really there, it doesn't change the fact that this episode really managed to flesh out the witch's world a lot more. Previously, during the town show episode, they had built it up as a place where even simple parlor tricks could be seen as magic, as they had become so out of touch with just plain old practicality. This episode ended up expanding on this both through some comical methods like the coffee shop and the Ojamajo unintentionally flexing on Majodon, to more tragic methods like the aforementioned old witch's backstory. Again, it was a case where no one was wrong and more of a byproduct of incompatible environments of the witch and humans world. Sure, the witches have become complacent to the point that they kind of remind me of the humans from Wall-E, but it's hard to blame individual feelings when the world they live in is just kind of messed up when you really think about it. Not that the human world was perfect either, as I do honestly think they might have been hinting at narcotics here, which could have been good grounds to cut ties with them. And yet, while they did take a little bit of a backseat in this one, the Ojamajo really managed to show their stuff just by being good people in a world that has lost track of the fundamentals of manners and upkeep. Add on top of that the prospect of a recurring antagonist, and this episode overall was very strong and really showing that this season has finally gotten back on track. This weekend, we'll likely see the first actual bits of information for Hirogaru Sky coming out, so hopefully we should have a video for it out by Sunday-ish. In the meantime, we'll keep working on that series review for the OG that we started at the very end of 2022. In between though, I think we might also cover something a little more fun, hopefully later this week, to celebrate a certain Netflix anime getting its second season. Look forward to all of that. Until then though, for now my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna get in on this witch's economy before it goes the way of crypto.